Yeah. I'm a little nervous, but it's all my favorite people. This
Talk to
is
them.
good.
Don't worry about everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready?
Yep.
Please welcome Adrienne, Merrick, Tagore, who will be presenting Can I Code Against the API to Learn product.
Thanks. So you guys, I need to memorialize this moment because it's my first talk, so I'm going to take a picture. Everybody say cheese. Cheese. Okay, thanks. I'm going to send that to my mom. So, okay, can you guys hear me okay? Oh, can you guys hear me okay? Is that more? Okay. Hi, I'm Adrienne. I'm going to talk today about my experience coding against OpenDNS's API in order to learn a new product, as my title points out. So, there we go. So my agenda for today is to talk a little bit about who I am, why I'm here, and what I tried to accomplish with this project. I'll tell you a little bit about the story of how it happened, as well as what I learned. And my hope is that you guys will be inspired to take the plunge and hack away at something new in an effort to learn something cool. But first, who am I? As Derek Zoolander so articulately pointed out, that's an important question. So my name's Adrienne. A colleague of mine recently called me a unicorn because I'm a woman. I work in marketing, I can code, and I like to present. Magical, am I right? But really, my name's Adrienne Merrick Tagore, and I work at OpenDNS. I've been here for 3 months, and when the B-Sides proposal time came around, I had just started at OpenDNS. I was pretty excited about the security graph and all of the exciting data that we have access to. So I've been in InfoSec for about a year. Right now I do product marketing at OpenDNS, and before I did that at White Hat Security. In my life, I've always been really interested in studying languages. From when I was very young, I studied French, Spanish, and Italian. But more recently, I've become more interested in programming languages. So now I'm trying to learn more of them and apply them. Before I worked at White Hat, I did user experience design at a financial services company. And in that role, we were designing a data visualization platform for stock data. So I got into SQL a little bit to try and access that data and learn a little bit more about it. And then after that, I went back to school for my MBA and an MIS degree where I picked up a little bit of Python and JavaScript. In the years since I graduated, I haven't really had a lot of opportunity to use those. So I thought that this would be a really fun project where I could experience applying Python to something really relevant to my work, and also at the same time learn a little bit about OpenDNS's products and interact with the API. So, the project. You might be wondering, why does this chick from marketing give a shit about an API? Don't you spend all day writing in hyperbole? Well, the truth is, I hate hyperbole, so I'm here to keep it real and tell you about what my experience was firsthand. My motivation is coming from a couple of places. So on a technical level, I wanted to see what our customers' experience was with our API. I wanted to put myself in their shoes and have a pretty good understanding of what they're going through. At an industry level, I know that the security landscape is changing and more of the tools that security researchers are using are API-based. So I wanted to experience that firsthand. Then on a more personal level, I wanted to dust off my Python knowledge and apply it to something relevant in my real day-to-day life beyond just modules in Code Academy. And I'm going to admit there was a little bit of ego too, because I wanted to prove my technical chops a little bit. So, do you guys remember the Syrian Electronic Army attack on the New York Times? It happened a while back. So I heard about that before I even worked in information security. And it always fascinated me because from a business perspective, I wanted to get an understanding of how can a business protect themselves from having something like that happen. So for this project, I wanted to think about DNS hijacking and how a company can prevent that from happening again. The original concept for this project was to create an alert where users from my company where they would be an alert created if they're visiting a new domain. So if you read the brief, that was what the topic was about. But as it turned out, when I started getting into the data, that wasn't really possible. The way that the data was architected made that way too complicated and beyond the scope of what my abilities were, especially with this time frame. So with the help of my colleagues at OpenDNS, we changed the scope a little bit. So the scope of this project is looking at the relationship between a domain and the IP addresses that are associated with it. This is coming from the business case where I have a company, let's say it's Adrienne Enterprises, and maybe I own 100 domains that are all contribute to my business. I want to monitor those 100 domains and know whether those are being associated with new IP addresses. I want to create an alert so that I can know whether DNS hijacking is going on at my company. So that's the premise of the project. To give you a little bit more background, who here has heard of OpenDNS? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you guys know that we do enterprise network security? You guys should raise your hand. You know it. Come on. All right. So I got a story for you. OpenDNS does cloud-delivered network security. We do both intelligence and enforcement. And what makes that possible is this awesome data set. OpenDNS has visibility into over 2% of all of the world's internet traffic requests, which is a lot of data. That's 50 billion with a B requests every day from 50 million users every single day. So from my perspective, the most fascinating part of what OpenDNS does is have visibility into this data and what we can do with it. So by interacting with the API, I can access that in a way that I wasn't able to do before. Oh, and this picture, this is the SEA attack. So this is sort of the inspiration for taking on this project. So here's a picture of the whiteboard for the initial plan. The end goal was to create something that would be useful for future development, so that I could learn about the API, but so that we could also have something that the research team might be able to use and build upon in the future. And also to impress my colleagues, because a lot of them had no idea that I knew how to code or was doing any of this. So that was kind of fun. So the plan that's drawn out here, which I don't expect you to read, was basically to create a list of domains in a text file, to query the security graph API for the information about the domain and the IP addresses associated with it. So the first part of the code would read the domain. The second part of the code would run a for loop that would search for each domain in there. And then for each domain, it would create a separate text file with a timestamp of when it was run. And then we would run a diff on that, so we would compare the results from the current one and the n-1 and write that to another text file called alert. And then it would involve a cron job so that this was scheduled to occur every day or every hour. So that was the plan. This is a picture of my GitHub repo, so you can see, I called this project Unicorn after Andrew's name for me. So basically there's a results folder where all of the domain name plus the timestamp are stored. Then there's do.py, which is the main document that has the script that does most of the heavy lifting. Then there's job.sh, which is the one that runs the diff and creates the alert. And then there's monitor.txt, which is the file that contains the domain names that I wanted to monitor. So I started the process by picking a list of which domains I wanted to examine, then wrote the script do.py, ran the code locally. That was surprisingly fulfilling, and posted it to GitHub. A little bit of trouble came when I tried to deploy the code on an Ubuntu server and run the script from there. There were a lot of issues with accessibility, tokens, all of those kind of things. So I spent a lot of time towards the end of the project troubleshooting with that. And it raised a lot of issues that I had never thought about before. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and show you the code. Okay. Can you guys see that okay? All right. So this is monitor.txt. So for this example, I looked at 3 domains, CNN, New York Times, and Spotify. Then do.py, oh, this is going to be weird. Okay. So I've included comments for notes for myself so that I would understand what was happening in the code. So at the beginning, it opens with the shebang, which is telling you which interpreter to use. I just thought shebang was an exclamation that you use when you're excited about something. I didn't know that it was a thing. And then the next block of code from lines 4 to 8, that's importing all the modules that we're going to run. Then lines 11 and 12 have the authentication tokens. That's where I ran into some problems when I deployed it to the server. And then the definition DNSDB, that's using the method for making the request to the API. So that's where we actually start talking to the API. Then the next block from lines 21 to 23, what's happening there is remember that results folder I showed you on GitHub? That's basically looking for it. If it doesn't exist, it'll create it. And the reason that you do that is so that you avoid having an error. And then line 26 is creating the list of domains. So that's the next block of text basically is saying, I'm going to read the list of domains that's in monitor.txt and then store that into Python. And then it'll print it to a list called domains. And then in this loop, every time you hit continue, you go back to the beginning of the for loop. So this runs for every one of the 3 domains that I had listed there. Then a timestamp, that's pretty apparent what it was. In this next block from lines 51 to 64, we're looking at all of the IP information associated with this domain, and that's a lot of information. So what this is really about is honing in and getting the information that is really relevant to us. So in this case, we're not really looking at a lot of data points, but you have to go through this process of refining. So, and then you make sure keys exist, whatever. And then the next block down at 68 to 70, that's gonna append a timestamp to each domain when it when it creates a file. And then it makes 2 conditions, and it checks that the first one is there first. So like where RR type equals A, that means that it has a domain associated with it, which means that it's ruling out new domains. And then it stores it in the RR field. So after this all happens, then the next step is to set the cron job, which we do in job.sh. So this also opens with a shebang. And then you can see here that this is comparing the last results to the current results and then writing that to alert.txt. So now I'm going to switch back to my presentation, if that works. Okay. Is that working? Okay. So this process, I learned a lot. It was, first of all, I thought that it would be way easier than it was, and ended up being really complicated. And I depended on the support of a lot of people to help me figure out how to get out of this mess. But it was pretty cool. It was my first time using terminal. And so even though I've had a Mac for a long time, like when I was in business school learning how to code, we always ran boot camp. So I had always used Windows. I never used terminal. So that was pretty cool. Like I said earlier, I was totally stoked about shebangs. That's still my favorite word. And I learned how to create a cron job. This was also my first time using GitHub. So I had created an account back in February, but had no clue how to load stuff into it and take it out. So that was pretty exciting. And it was also quite an experience deploying that to the server. In troubleshooting the problems with the server, I learned about what a fork is. That was kind of cool. So that, for you guys that don't know, a fork is when you have an original code base and then you want to test out an experiment with it. So you basically clone it and you can modify it and make sure that it works. So with the Security Graph API, the original code worked only when I was on the OpenDNS network. And when I tried to use it from the server, it didn't work. So that was fun. Most importantly, I got by with a little help from my friends. It really was a team effort, and I appreciate everyone who helped me get here. So this is my list of people who I'm eternally grateful for helping me figure this out. This was a super fun project, and I learned a lot. So I hope that you guys are inspired to experiment with something new, and don't worry about getting stuck. You'll figure a way out. Thank you guys for your time.